welcome to WooStream, bringing Willamette to you. I'm Abby Kale, Associate Director of Alumni and Parent Engagement. Today's conversation features Mandy Devereux, Director of Career Development for the College of Arts and Sciences here at Willamette University. Mandy began her professional career in human resources before moving to career development over a decade ago. She has experience with recruiting, hiring, training, strategic relationship development, leading teams, fundraising, and supporting students in their career and professional development. We are excited to talk to Mandy about the skills and characteristics employers are looking for, how to effectively tailor your resume, and gain some insight on job search strategies that can help you land your next opportunity. Mandy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Abby. I'm excited to be here and to share some of these tips, tricks, and strategies with these alumni on the call. So a few things that we are going to talk about today. We're going to cover what employers are really looking for when they are hiring and posting openings at their organizations, which will bring us into some of these NACE core competencies. And then we're going to talk about how to take those core competencies and use them effectively so that you can tailor your toolkit, which is your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn, so that you can be a more competitive applicant when you are applying for things that you're interested in. I also have some resources available for everyone on the call that they can utilize as they start to master these tips, tricks, and strategies. So what are employers really looking for? So these competencies are based on, and Abby shared with you all that my start professionally was in human resources. So when human resources directors are hiring or partnering with managers to hire, they go through, a process of what is it that we're looking for? What are the things our organization needs the most? And NACE is the National Association of Colleges and Employers. So this is an organization that works with both the hiring authorities and the universities. And they ask employers, like, what is it that you're really looking for? What skills do you need? And oftentimes when you read a job description, sometimes candidates will get a little discouraged because it sounds like all of these skills that they don't quite have. What I love and why I love the liberal arts is that the skills employers looking for are things that our students and alumni are learning and learn quite extensively at Willamette. Critical thinking and problem solving is a key competency employers are looking for. Oral and written communication skills, teamwork and collaboration, work ethic and professionalism, leadership, digital technology, global and intercultural fluency, and career management. So a few of these are self-explanatory. I get a few questions around what is global intercultural fluency, the ability to relate to and interact across diverse groups and cultures. And what is career management is another one that I get, which is your ability to be able to articulate your career goals, your skill set, and how they relate to what you would like to do now and in the future. So this is what we're really going to talk about today, and we're going to hone in on the big four. So the top four, critical thinking and problem solving is number one. Oral and written communication, teamwork, collaboration, and professionalism and work ethic. So when this is where the toolkit, and this is why this presentation I think is so fun for me, and the work that I get to do is so fun, because these are, some people call them soft skills. I call them essential skills that people have that I could tell you I'm really critical thinker. And you would have to take my word for that, right? Like, I'm great at problem solving. Maybe you meet me, maybe I'm a resume. So what employers want you to do is prove it. So these are skills that they're looking for that you as a candidate, whether it's your resume, your LinkedIn, or in your interview, you have to prove to them that you have them. Because if you just tell someone that you have a great work ethic, they don't know that to be true. The same way that you could tell them, I speak a different language. If they start speaking to you in that language and you can respond, they can test that skill right away. But if I say, I'm a great collaborator, they're not going to know that until they see me on the job. So a lot of employers and HR professionals, they really do a lot of hiring based on behavioral-based interview processes, which is basically past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. So you want to prove these things in your materials. So we're going to talk about how to do that so that you can land your next opportunity. Okay, so how do you show these skills? Well, you tailor your toolkit. So we're going to talk resume. We'll come back and talk a little bit about cover letter too, because I want to flesh out resume, because that tends to be the major document of a job application, and I'll talk about kind of where the cover letter sits. Some employers require a cover letter no matter what. Some of them, I've seen this recently with students where they're just able to submit a resume. So you want to craft your action verbs in relation to the job posting, and we're talking about what that means. And I'm going to talk about kind of how to tailor your resume so that you're really highlighting some of the skills that you have in relation to what these employers are really looking for. Okay, so let's talk about resumes. So I'm going to actually pull up a resume sample, and this is a resource that you all are going to have access to at the end of this presentation. Hold on, let me get my Chrome. Okay, this is where Zoomy Zoom. It's in the same place. Okay, so I'm going to pull up just a traditional looking resume from our website. So if you ever want to use this, sometimes it'll give you some trouble if you aren't using a willamette.edu email address. But if you want this template, you should be able to make a copy for yourself, and then you can use this. So when we're talking in this presentation, what we're talking about are these bullet points or accomplishment statements. So what you want to do is think about your action verb, right? So where you start your bullet point. You want to think of the most powerful and truthful action verb that you can think of, followed by the task that you have done, and then the purpose and result of that, so that you can write really effective accomplishment statements. This is just a little graphic here for you. I'm moving my pictures around so that I can see the presentation at the same time here. So you want to talk about your action verb. Pick one of the action verbs that you found that are powerful and key words, right? So you can find a lot of this in the job description. And we're going to use an example so that we can see. And then the task that was completed. And then a lot of people forget the purpose and result of what they did. So we're going to use an example, and I chose Oregon Community Credit Union as an example for several reasons. I've worked with OCCU for many years in my previous role, and I also found it to be a very inclusive job posting to a lot of people's backgrounds and where people maybe can relate to a lot of things within this position. Okay, so let's choose this full-time role. And what I did here is I used this job description to kind of, this is what I would encourage you to do. So you find a job that you are excited about, is you take the job posting and you spend some time really highlighting what some of those key things are within the job posting. So OCCU is looking for tellers. Those tellers will assist members with financial transactions, actively cross-sell, and by asking individual questions and providing personalized services. So you think about those 4 competencies, right? This is critical thinking and problem solving. This is communication. You probably are going to be working with other people in a team environment, and have a professional approach to how you are engaging with someone, because you're talking about their finances, right? So this employer is really looking for those core competencies. And they add some different things to help the candidate along. If you have some hard skills, there's additional compensation for Spanish speakers. They have a philosophy that's really community involved. They allow their employees even time off to volunteer in the community. That may be a clue for you. If you have done that in your experience at Willamette or since Willamette, that you do any sort of volunteer activity, you may want to create a custom section on your resume that says community involvement or volunteer organizations. High levels of work performance. This is work ethic, right? This is where you may want to talk about student leadership or your GPA or something that might be important to this organization. And then you start going into like the key responsibilities, right? Exceptional member service. These are specific keywords you can use, right? If you've ever processed financial transactions, if you've ever worked at the bistro or in a restaurant, or I worked at a grocery store for when I was an undergrad. Folks who can do many things. Willamette is good at teaching people how to do that, balancing school and work and extracurriculars and sports and things like that. And then they have some core competencies that are important to their organization as well. So when you go back to your resume, you will want, if you take some time just to highlight some of these things, you can sometimes look at the language that they're using and make sure it's in your resume. You can also take some of these key aspects or these core competencies to say, like, how am I really proving to them that I have critical thinking and problem solving skills, and that I am involved in my community, and that I really care about customers, or that I have experience in customer service in my past. So there's, in this little section here, it says, like, you know, different sections you can include in your resume that can kind of help highlight that. In that resume sample that I showed you all, right? You have, this one starts with education, which is pretty common when you are a recent grad. As you get more experience, sometimes your education ends up going under your experience section. It depends on what is the thing that's most qualifying you for the job at the time. Is it your experience or is it your educational background? But this one has a couple key sections. This one has volunteer experience, honors and awards, and skills. This can look a lot of different ways depending on your own background. You can have, let's say for this particular role, maybe you have banking experience. It's very specific. Maybe you have customer service experience and you have a section up here that says customer service experience. I find sometimes, particularly when I work with candidates or job seekers who have more life experience, that they will find that the thing that qualifies them for the job the most is actually like 3 or 4 experiences down. And they're like, but this is the one I really want to talk about. And a way sometimes to bring that up is to name the section. Maybe it's writing and editing experience, or it's advocacy work or project-based experiences that you maybe did during undergrad. And that's what you really want to call out. This first section of your resume, like that first third or so of your resume, you want that to be something that makes the reader excited about you. So you want that part to have some sort of very relevant title or experience or something in it, so that you have a chance to make it easy for your reader to see pretty quickly that you're a qualified candidate. So think about what your headings might be. And then what's recommended is that you go in reverse chronological order by section. So if you have an experience that's 2 or 3 years old that you want to bring to the top, make sure that you title that section so that you can be reverse chronological order in that section. And then the next section, maybe it's more recent experience, but it's reverse chronological order, but it kind of can bring forward some of your other things. Volunteer experience can also be, leadership and community involvement, things like that. So really think about your section headings and how they tie to the position and what you really want to highlight.
Mandy, on resume and formatting, is there a recommended length? So is it recommended that you keep it to 1 page, to 2 pages? As people gain experience, that the resume tends to grow. So what are your recommendations on that?
Yes, so there are some nuances based on the industry that you're in. So if you are, I would say for most of us, it's going to be 1 page for every 7 years of experience. After about the 7-year mark, your experience is most likely going to need to be updated or replaced to where, you're probably going to have a 2-page resume, unless that stays super relevant. But if, for me, it's been some years since I worked at the grocery store, right? But it's on my resume page too. But in the next few years, it's going to fall off. I've spent so long in higher education that the things that I knew at the grocery store when I worked there and did customer service and whatnot, and I did their HR, like systems that they're not even using anymore. It's not as relevant of experience anymore. The exception to that is if you're in the sciences or in academia or in performing art, you might have what's called a CV, which stands for curriculum vitae, which is a longer, more inclusive list of, you can think about a scientist or an academic, right? All the classes they teach, all the scientific methods they know, all the presentations they've had, and those documents tend to be much longer. So this is an interactive part of the presentation, but I think we're webinar style. But we can use the chat maybe to look at this job posting. And what I would love to do is think about or you can do this individually actually. And if you feel comfortable sharing, great. But or if you have a different job description, please feel free to use it. But go to this position, right? We looked at some of the things that they are looking for: community involvement experience, working with customers. Can you write for yourself a powerful accomplishment statement based on an experience that you've had in the past that would showcase a skill that you have that this particular job is looking for? So thinking of that action verb.
Mandy, one that came through is accelerated.
Ooh, that's great. Okay, accelerated. So accelerated, and then what did you accelerate? It sounds like it might be project-based, accelerated. Maybe it's a key project that you've worked on, or accelerated a finish date on a fundraising project, met the deadline earlier than you anticipated. Especially if it was related to achieving a goal for a customer or on behalf of the team, for this experience would be, I think, particularly relevant. I have a couple of examples here. Balanced multiple competing priorities in a fast-paced restaurant, ensuring up to 10 tables were provided friendly, efficient, and high-quality service. So you can talk about how you balance multiple things at once. Selected as a trainer and oriented over a dozen new employees to the team and taught them how to juggle competing demands while actively participating in a team-based approach to providing excellent service. So when you think about your own accomplishment statements, think about the action verb that you use. Throughout your resume, try not to repeat your action verbs. Try to use a different one every time so that you are showing a differentiated skill set. Try to make them as powerful as possible. I work primarily with an undergraduate school of arts and sciences, and it's probably the key coaching tip that I give students on resumes is that they use action verbs that put them in more of a back seat where I know that they actually were the one doing the work. So they'll say assisted or helped instead of led or accelerated, right? Like that is, that actually moves that, a word like that, an accomplishment statement like that starts with that, actually moves a candidate from being a doer to an achiever, right? So what did you achieve, right? So sometimes it's what did you accomplish? What did you achieve? What do you feel most proud of? And then write your accomplishment statements based on that. Not what you were responsible for or the task that you had to do, but what you feel like you left behind there. Like, what is your legacy and what do you feel most proud of in that particular position? Okay, so we'll leave that there. But if you look at your own resume and you read your accomplishment statement and you cannot answer the question, for what purpose did I do this? Or is this what I feel most proud of when I think about this experience? That gives you an opportunity to enhance what you have so that you can be more specific and tailored to what it is that you want to showcase about yourself. Okay, on the career development page, there is a resume and cover letter. I can actually kind of do a walk up to the page. So this is career development. This is job and internship resources. And then there's a resume and cover letter guide. There are, in Resume Basics, a list to a PDF of action verbs. What I like about this list and why I use it so much is that it really lets you see the skills, like if you use these particular action verbs, what skills they're really highlighting, so you can make sure that you don't get stuck in one area where you're like, I have, you know, maybe you have 15, 20 different bullet points on your resume, but, you know, you look at them and 60% of them are in people skills and that you don't have hardly any in other skills that the employer is looking for. The other thing that I wanted to show you on this page is some of our resume samples. There's that one I showed you, which is it's a very basic resume. There's a CV for those of you who may be in the sciences. And then we also have some that are a little more designed for people who want more of a design style in their resume. And if you're looking for some templates or things to get you started, there's some resources there. There's also resources. I'm going to move into cover letter. When you think about your cover letter, sometimes cover letter is where, you know, the resume has a formula to it, right? Like action, verb, task, result, right? And then the cover letter, it's like, what do I say and how do I say it in a way that will make them excited about me? So what I like to tell students and folks that I'm working with is that you have a job description that at this point you should have highlighted some keywords. You've tailored your resume so that you are showcasing or you're using sections to say like, okay, they want customer service and they want leadership and community involvement. I'm going to talk about my experiences in a way that makes me showcase what I'm most proud of. Now, the cover letter is actually the document that sits in between these two things that gives you an opportunity to tell your story in a way that's not just your resume in a narrative form, right? But you're going to take that job description and read it thoroughly, do some research on their website, and choose the 3 skills that you have that they want the most based on what they've told you. They have it like, here's our perfect candidate. And you're like, here is me. So give them an opportunity to learn about the things that are most relevant to them that you can do. When you write your cover letter, you're going to use it's a business professional format. And I have a video that is on here as a resource too. That's basically me saying this again. If you're like, I'm taking notes and she's talking too fast, but so I'll send you that video too in the presentation. But in your first paragraph, essentially tell them why you're applying, what job you're applying to, and the 3 skills that you have that they're looking for. It's like writing a paper again, right? Like that's your thesis statement. That's what you get to showcase. Like, here is me and why I'm interested in your company and the 3 things that I have that you need. Then in your next paragraph, usually 2 skills come together really well, right? So maybe you focus on leadership and community involvement, or you focus on customer service and community relations. But you write a topic sentence, again, similar to writing a paper, that highlights what you're going to talk about in that paragraph in relation to those skills. And then you tell a story. We call it a star story. The situation that you were in, the task that you did, the action that you specifically took, and then the result of that. And then there's usually 1 skill still hanging out there that you get to use that 3rd paragraph to talk about, and then you can close your cover letter. I do still, there's exceptions to this, of course, but cover letters, I do like to keep them 1 page. Okay, so a little bit about cover letters, a little bit about resumes. We're going to talk about LinkedIn next. So that was a pretty brief overview of cover letters. Were there any questions there?
I'm not seeing any, but if any come in, we can get them at the end.
Okay, fantastic. So we're going to move into LinkedIn. Okay, so now that you have your resume jazzy and snazzy, you can use it to update your LinkedIn profile. I do encourage, in terms of your toolkit, for you to focus on your resume first, so that it makes LinkedIn really easy, honestly, so that you can get into LinkedIn and do some of the things that you would want to do. So a few tips on your LinkedIn. We actually have a whole LinkedIn how to do this series that's like 3 20-minute videos. So this is a very brief overview. So if you want to deep dive into any of this stuff, we have more deep dive things, but I wanted to give you tips, tricks, and strategies, not long and intense deep dive types of things. So profile tips: make sure you have a picture. Make sure that picture represents you professionally. So it's not you and other people. It's not you and your pet. It's not you at a random location. It is a professional picture of you. Some people feel a little intimidated by that. They think they have to get a professional headshot. You'd be surprised what can be done with a camera, with a smartphone these days. Like, you can get a nice picture, especially if you use the portrait, if you have that or someone has access to that. But just have that picture be a professional representation of yourself. Then use, your resume that you just spent this time on to update your LinkedIn profile. The cool thing about LinkedIn, when you contrast it to a resume, is that LinkedIn has no page limits. You can put whatever you want on there, right? It also, you can't organize it by sections. So if you have a longer story to tell, LinkedIn is a place that you're able to do that. Do some research on LinkedIn and follow companies and groups that you are interested in. Again, LinkedIn is a professional networking tool. You have to cultivate it intentionally. Because I work with students a lot, I kind of joke with them on this. It's like the least addictive social media that you're going to have, except if you're a career director. Maybe folks like me are on there every day, but for the most part, it's a social media that has to be purposefully generated. It's a network of people that you would have in your office space. Sometimes it is people who are friends with you as well, but it's people and colleagues that you would work with. So it is a different kind of platform that you use to really make sure that you know what's happening in your industry and things like that. So that's what's going to end up being on your LinkedIn page. And then once you have that and you start following organizations and you start, there's hashtags you can follow. LinkedIn's always developing some kind of new cool things in there. It's really used for professional networking. And again, I talk to students about this a lot. So a lot of times they've never done this before. Professional networking can feel incredibly awkward. And it can be a moment where you may wonder, like, How do I talk to someone when I feel like I want something from them and I don't know what I'm supposed to be giving them, right? So what I want you to know is that it's the easier it like networking is easier when you start with things that feel more familiar to you, whether that is people you already know or the Willamette alumni network of folks. Start there and give yourself a chance to have conversations with people who want to help you because they want to help you. It's not because you want something and they're like, I don't even know that what this conversation is going to be about. Like, they are excited to talk to you about their job and what they do, and they get to help an alum or share a little bit about, you know, what's happening in their profession with someone who's literally curious about it. That is actually pretty cool. It's not often that professionals get approached to say, like, can you tell me about your job and how you got there and what advice you would have for me? And the tie that you have to them is that you went to the same university. That is a great place to start. That person will oftentimes start, you know, helping you open your door. If you're like, I'm new to this, and I'm like, you're my first conversation that I've had, and I really appreciate how well this went or whatever, you'd be surprised how many people would be happy to help you continue to do that. So I'm going to show you on LinkedIn. If you go to LinkedIn, as I do daily, you don't have to go daily. You just search in this box up here for Willamette University, and then you can click on alumni. You can see here we have pretty close, almost 15,000 alums in the system. You can see where they live. You can see where they work. You can see what they do. You can see what they studied. You can see what they're skilled at, and you can see how you are connected. That is an information like database right there. So even if you decide, I'm not quite ready to have conversations, but I want to do some really, maybe looking for a career change. Maybe you majored in any one of these. This is new actually on LinkedIn, that they're trying to add more and more of the majors that represent universities. But maybe you majored in international studies and you're looking for your next job and you want to look by major and see what other people have done. COVID has made things very complicated for job searching. Sometimes it's hard to get into, you can't even maybe sometimes have an in-person interview. You're not sure the culture of an organization. But I'll tell you a few things that it's done that is really interesting is that folks aren't quite as location specific as they were before. You can network with people all over. Almost everyone has some sort of access to some virtual or digital platform where you can meet with people from all sorts of places and have conversations with them. Here they are. Right? Here are some folks that you can see what they're doing. You can narrow this further because sometimes it's current students. If you're like, I want to make sure that this represents more alumni, you can start to narrow this down, right? So we just narrowed our list down. My encouragement is if you do research like this, get this to be a number. 200 would be my max, through either keyword search or narrowing things down. So it's actually doesn't feel overwhelming to look at. Looking at 500 people is a lot, right? But looking at 100, that feels good. Looking at less than 100, that's easy, right? You can do that, you know, in a quick little narrowing, right? So finding folks, right? So you get into their profile. I'm going to click on this one for no particular reason at all. But looking at a profile, right? Professional picture of this individual. They have a customized, this is their own business, which is pretty awesome. So they have a picture behind them, and you can see through their background what it is that what they've done, what their first job was, what they majored in, international studies, what they did looks like right after Willamette, is they went to the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising for a year for a program. And then you can look at their trajectory. So if this is someone that you're interested in, or you interested in entrepreneurship, or what does it mean to start and operate your own business, this could be someone you potentially reach out to. If not, and you're like, they're kind of interesting, but what I mostly just learned about was this company, and I'm curious about what this company does, what jobs that they have, you can actually follow this company, and this is how you start to cultivate professionally. I recommend doing this in a way that feels, sometimes I compare it to exercise, right? So like regularly cultivating and maintaining your professional network just to keep it in shape and make sure that you're not, waiting years before you follow up with professional connections, or that you're not understanding what's happening in industries you're interested in. So maintain it in a way that just feels regular and consistent. That can be once a week for you. That could be twice a week. That could be 3 times a month, like wherever you're at. Typically, people do not do this when they're not job seeking. So they'll leave their network alone. And I really encourage you to keep it regular and keep it in shape, because you need your network sometimes at surprising moments. And you want it to be there when you need it. You don't want to have to be restarting it, or, similar to exercise, right? Like, ooh, I kind of haven't been doing so good. I got to restart. And maybe once upon a time, you could run a mile in 8 minutes, and then you go and you try to run a mile and it's going to take you about 12 minutes. And you're like, what happened? So you gotta just keep it maintained so that you can have it when you need it and know what's happening in your industry, especially as skills change. That digital technology was another skill employers look for. And sometimes you can see your industry shifting, and you can upskill on your own so that you're relevant for your own industry, because you can see the things that are happening within it.
Mandy, going back to our Willamette Alumni Network, I will say that I've reached out via LinkedIn to countless alumni, and even just letting them know that I'm from Willamette. Sometimes it takes a little while for them to respond if they're in the middle of something, but almost all the time I get a response. So even if you're not sure, just reach out. And so often they like to connect with another Bearcat and help you through whatever it is that they can help you with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so this is the resource page for you all. So there's action verbs on here. There's links to that resume and cover letter sample. I didn't talk about our career communities pages, but we have 6 different career communities that have various resources within them. If you are exploring careers or exploring a career change, you can explore different things within the career community. Sometimes there are professional associations, especially within, if you deep dive, like you're like, oh, writing and publishing sounds cool. Like, what would I do if I wanted to do that? There's industry resources. There's quick links to the alumni that are doing this kind of work already. If you want to, instead of going into LinkedIn and doing your own honing, some of these are pre-honed for you, and then different resources. So if you're career searching or career changing or things like that, that's a good opportunity or a good place to find some various resources. We do have that LinkedIn video series that I was talking about. If you're like, I've never made a LinkedIn before in my life, this is something you can access, of laying the foundation, utilizing that alumni search tool that I was showing you in more detail. And then there are some bells and whistles to LinkedIn that I even learned about, as this is one of my current interns, Alexander. He is a networking genius. And he's like, no, Mandy, let me show you all these cool things. And I'm like, wow, like I spend time in here every day and I didn't know all of those. And then what does it mean when you're a third connection or a second connection? And how do you leverage that? This whole video is about that. And we did it kind of podcast style with two individuals in the office kind of talking back and forth. Like, did you know this? Oh, cool. So it's a little bit edutaining, hopefully fun to watch, things like that. And then we also have a comprehensive networking guide. There's Alexander again. So this is a clear passion of his, is networking and building yourself professionally, especially for folks who do not have a natural network. Alexander has built his whole professional network from the ground up and wants to teach other people how to do it. So it really goes through pretty comprehensively, depending on where you're at, how to do this, how to have an informational interview. There's some sample language if you want to reach out and you don't know exactly what to say, things like that, really to kind of help you reach out, build, and maintain your network.
Mandy, you talk about informational interviews. There was a question that came in could you talk a little bit about informational interviews or informational conversations? When is it appropriate to ask for one, and how can it help?
Yeah, it's appropriate to ask for an informational interview anytime you're curious about a particular field or profession, sometimes even a position. So I'll give a few examples, right? So let's say you are currently employed, but you are interested in another area, even within your own organization. Asking someone who works there, if you can ask them a few questions about either work and what they do, so that you can learn, that is completely appropriate. It used to be over coffee, right? So now it could be a coffee Zoom conversation. If you have someone who's in a different industry or profession than you are, particularly if they are sometimes, in roles that you're gravitating towards, or goal roles that you may have for yourself, and you're like, how do they get there? I wonder. That's an appropriate time to ask for an informational interview. I had a couple informational interviews with a position that I currently had open, or recently had open, that candidates who were interested in the job actually said, I'm interested, but I'd like to talk with you first about what your goals are for this position. It was a new position at the institution. So they said, I'd like to have informational conversations so I can learn if this is going to be good for me. So there's lots of different ways to do this, whether it's career curiosity, or looking to learn how to shift industries, or trying to cultivate a relationship with someone that you really admire. They're all great opportunities to have informational interviews. If there's other questions, please do ask them, because this is the end of the presentation, and I hope that the next slide is a little more of the trick, since it's October. If no one knows who David Pumpkins is, it's a good YouTube watch. We very much like David S. Pumpkins in career development. We every October have some sort of joke or fun thing that we do with this. So any questions?
Yeah, there's one. I think this goes back to the resume a little bit. If you have an older experience that is really relevant, should you include it?
Yes. There would be limits to, I think it would expire after a certain period of time. But the key thing in that question is that it's still relevant. So if it is still relevant, then yes, you should include it. If it feels like it's not as relevant anymore, I usually have a gut check question that I ask folks if they're like, should I keep this on my resume? Like, would you talk about it in an interview? That's usually the question that I'll ask. And they're like, well, no, I would talk about this other thing. I'm like, well, then that's time. Then there's something more relevant that replaces it. But if there's not something more relevant, then include it.
Do you have any webcasts, podcasts, et cetera, that you would recommend for somebody who is job searching?
I would. And I would say that it depends on your industry. In terms of just like listening to career professionals, talk, you can find lots of advice out there. Sometimes it's conflicting, to be honest, where people are like, you should do this, you should do this. The best resources are going to come from your industry specifically and professionals within your industry. Career coaches can provide like tips like I have, right, of how to help you compete. If you need like to tailor your resume, or ways to make sure that you're crafting really good cover letters and personal statements. But if it's more of like, how do I succeed in this particular industry? That's usually good for that industry. We're mostly good at helping people make career decisions and tailoring the materials once they've done that work so that they're competitive. But I'm going to give a couple out there because there's a website I like a lot called The Muse. It's MUSE. I love their articles. I love how they feature employers. It's very visual. They tend to be a little tech focused in who they focus on in terms of employers, but I pull their articles all the time and share them with students, because I find it to be really, in terms of like a career voice, they do have career coaches you can work with, things like that, but they cost money. But just their articles and the way that they're written is very accessible and very right on for the most part.
I know on WooStream, as people are trying to learn more a little bit about a job or information about a different career path, we are starting to feature more alumni that are doing those things. So you can find those in the archives. We're also happy to make connections as well. If you're not quite sure, you want to reach out to somebody who is higher up in a company, you're welcome to send me an email, or somebody in the reach out to the alumni office. I'm happy to help make that connection. And sometimes it's a little bit of it's easier for me to ask sometimes than it is for somebody else to go to just do a cold email out on LinkedIn. But so we're happy to do that as well. Well, we will make sure that I know some of the information available on the career development website is password protected, but we can help you get access to that. Mandy, is the best way for them to reach out to the alumni office and ask for downloads of those? Or what's the best way for them to get those?
Yeah, I think that would be great. Like if folks want to reach out to you and they say, I actually tried to click this link and it didn't work, then we can make sure that you all have access to that and can share that with the alumni as they need whatever access. Hopefully some of it is just accessible to them. Great.
Well, Mandy, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your time, your insights into the hiring process with us. I know these tips and resources will be very helpful for our current alumni and our future alumni as they start to consider their career paths. If you enjoyed this discussion and would like to see more webinars as well as other exciting Willamette content, continue to tune in to WooStream, our virtual programming platform. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.